Most people walk through life without ever thinking about the geometry of danger, and that blind spot is exactly what a predator counts on. This video breaks down the science of how attackers move, why their own biology works against them, and how one 45-degree step can erase you from their reality entirely. Picture someone walking toward you late at night, and something about the rhythm is wrong, not the speed, the intention. Shoulders rolled forward, chin tucked down, eyes locked onto yours with a focus that has nothing to do with passing you on a sidewalk. Most people sense that something is off, but can't name it fast enough to act on it, and by the time the brain catches up, the gap has already closed. What's happening in that moment isn't just a social threat, it's a commitment. In the attacker's mind, the action is already finished. The mental bridge from where he stands to where you're standing has already been crossed, and the only role he's written for you is a stationary one. He isn't calculating odds anymore. He's executing a plan he rehearsed before he ever got close enough for you to notice him. Freezing is the default response, and he knows it. Heart rate spiking past 120 beats per minute, hands going shaky, feet going nowhere. That's the reaction he's counting on. That paralysis is the whole strategy. The tracks only exist if you stay on them. And staying on them means handing someone else the ending to a story that started the second he picked you out of the crowd. Here's what's happening inside the attacker's skull the second he commits. His adrenal glands flood his system with epinephrine and norepinephrine, his muscles prime for impact, and his brain shifts into a tunnel state that feels like power but functions closer to a blindfold. Under that kind of adrenaline load, peripheral vision collapses from roughly 180 degrees down to a 30-degree cone. He can read the label on your jacket. He cannot see the curb 6 inches to his left, the car parked beside you, or anything else living outside that narrow slice of the world he's locked onto. That hyperfocus feels like a superpower to him, and that's the thing. It's the exact condition we're going to turn against him. He's a guided missile with a camera that only points one direction. Locked onto a target he's already decided isn't moving, the car parked beside you, the gap to his right, the open space, just outside that 30-degree window, none of it registers. His brain has already deleted it. What feels like his greatest advantage just became a door we can walk right through, and he has no idea it's open. This is the first piece of the blueprint. You don't need to be stronger. You don't need to be faster in a straight line. You need to understand that his focus, the thing making him feel invincible right now, is already working against him before he's thrown a single punch. Now he's moving. Weight shifts forward, center of gravity crosses over his lead foot, and at this exact microsecond, the physics become permanent. A 200-pound body launching at 15 feet per second cannot course-correct mid-lunge because power and agility are a trade-off, and he just spent every ounce of his agility to generate that power. He's ballistic. The flight path is fixed, and no amount of intent changes once the mass is committed. Backing up here is the instinct, and that instinct will get you hurt. Step back to feet, and he reaches 2 feet further, which means you're still on the tracks and simply moving slower than the thing closing in on you. A lot of people survive the first lunge and think they've bought themselves time, but all they've done is reset the same geometry with slightly less distance to work with. You'd be fighting his strength, and his strength is the one thing he actually trained for. That fight has one outcome. The pivot works because it doesn't engage his strength at all. It engages physics, and physics doesn't care how committed he is. As he enters arm's length, you step off, not backward, sideways, at a 45-degree angle to the outside of his attacking shoulder. As that lead foot hits the ground, you pivot on it the way a door swings on a hinge, body rotating in one fluid motion, no wasted movement. One step, one pivot. And you've relocated from directly in front of him to somewhere his brain already labeled as empty air. The tunnel he was looking through now points at nothing. You're standing outside it entirely, and from his perspective, you've simply ceased to exist. What his nervous system does next is the whole game. 500 milliseconds, half a second, is how long it takes a human brain running on adrenaline to register a vanished target. Arrest forward momentum. Scan the environment for the threat and attempt to reset. 3 heartbeats. During all 3 of them, his back is partially toward you. His balance is broken, and he's throwing force at a position you left a breath ago. His system is rebooting while yours is already running the next sequence. That gap between his confusion and his recovery is the window everything else depends on. Standing at his flank now, the geometry has fully reversed. His ribs, his ear, his blind side are all exposed. And any strike delivered from this position lands without warning because there's no visual cue for him to brace against or roll with. Preparation requires information, and right now he has none. The angle of dominance doubles the effective impact of anything you throw. Not because you hit harder from this position, but because an unbraced body absorbs force completely differently than one that saw it coming. The smarter play, and this is where the pivot separates itself from every other street defense concept, is using that half-second window to exit entirely. The space the step created is already an open lane, and by the time he turns around and locates you, 15 feet of separation have opened up between the danger and where you're standing. You didn't match his strength. You didn't trade blows. You didn't give him a second opportunity to reset and come at you again. You outmaneuvered his biology, and those are not the same thing as winning a fight. Winning a fight means both people stayed on the tracks. This means you got off before the collision ever happened. The lateral pivot is a geometry lesson delivered through footwork, not a fighting technique, and the person who internalizes that distinction walks away clean. Violence moves in straight lines. Predators build mental maps that assume their target stays put, and one 45-degree step erases you from that map before the collision ever lands. The attacker goes home that night and tells people the story of the person who just disappeared. He doesn't understand the half-second lag. He doesn't understand tunnel vision. He doesn't understand that he was fighting a blueprint, not a victim. Practice the step until it lives in your feet rather than your head, because when the moment arrives, there won't be time to recall instructions or run through the logic. The pivot has to be automatic, a trained reflex that fires before conscious thought catches up, because conscious thought is too slow for a 200-pound object moving at 15 feet per second. That half-second window opens, holds for exactly as long as physics allows, and closes. What you've trained will either be there or it won't. That's the whole blueprint. Get off the tracks.